Okay, let me do a quick video giving you an overview of these three parts of what we're looking at with rational expressions. Let's look at adding and subtracting, complex fractions, and solving. Okay, I want to start with if you were asked to solve something like x over x minus 2 minus 8 over x squared minus 4 equals negative 3 over x plus 2. What I want you to pay attention to is how we use the least common denominator in each of these cases. All right, so with solving, you're going to use the LCD to clear the fractions. Okay, so what we would want to do is any denominator that's not factored, we'd want to factor it. Okay. And then we'd look at the denominators and we decide what's the least common denominator going to be for these. Okay, so looking at the denominators, I know I'm going to need an x minus 2 factor and an x plus 2 factor. And then that'll clear the fractions. Okay, so I'm going to take the x over x minus 2 and I'm going to multiply by x minus 2, x plus 2. Then I'm going to have the minus 8 over the x minus 2, x plus 2. I'm just writing the factored form of the original denominator. Multiply it by x minus 2, x plus 2. And then take the negative 3 over x plus 2 and multiply over there by x minus 2, x plus 2. Okay, so what happens when you do that is the x minus 2's are going to cancel. So here I have an x and an x plus 2. Here the x minus 2 and the x plus 2 cancel, so I have just minus 8. Then over on the right-hand side, the x plus 2 cancels. So there I have a negative 3 with the x minus 2. So that's going to give me an x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals negative 3x plus 6. And at this point, I start trying to think about, well, how are things going to work from here to the end? And when I see the squared, I know I need to get everything equal to 0. So that's why I'll decide to add a 3x and take away a 6. So then I'll get x squared plus 5x minus 14 equals 0. So it's quadratic. I'm going to wind up factoring that. And I'm going to get an x plus 7 and an x minus 2 when I factor it. So that's going to give me two answers, either x plus 7 or x minus 2 equal to 0. All right, so that means that either x equals negative 7 or x equals 2. But these are the kind of problems where you have to watch out. You have to make sure that these don't make a denominator 0. Negative 7 wouldn't make any of the original denominators 0 here. It doesn't make any of these 0. So it's okay. But 2 would make a denominator 0. So you have to rule it out. And the only answer then to this question would be negative 7. Okay? All right, now let's look at the middle question where we're dealing with a complex fraction. Okay, with complex fractions, the directions are just going to say to simplify. And the example we're looking at was the x over x minus 2 divided by 8 over the x squared minus 4. Okay, first thing you would do is you would wind up factoring the denominators of the little fractions. Okay. And then you're going to look for the LCD. And what you're going to do is use the LCD to clear the fractions, but in a different way. Still going to use them to clear the little fractions. Okay, so you look at these denominators, and again, you can see that the LCD would have to be an x minus 2 and an x plus 2. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to multiply the numerator of this big fraction by x minus 2, x plus 2, and then the denominator of the big fraction by x minus 2, x plus 2. That's what makes it okay to do, because you really are multiplying by 1, so you're not really changing the quantity, okay? But by doing this, when you simplify the numerator now, the x minus 2's are gone, and you just have x and x plus 2. And when you simplify the denominator of the large fraction, both the x minus 2 and the x plus 2's cancel. So you just have 8. Okay, and this would be your final answer. Okay. All right, that's the factored form. It's also okay if you multiplied out. Okay, that's okay too. All right. All right, now, one more one I want to look at, and I've got to hurry because I've done this video a couple times, and if they're too long, it doesn't like it. But I want all 3 of these on one. If we're adding and subtracting, the directions will still say simplify, but I gave you a subtraction problem we're going to look at. Wanted us to subtract x over x minus 2 minus 8 over x squared minus 4. All right, so the problem with this is you can't just clear the fractions because you don't have an equation and you don't have a fraction divided by a fraction. So you can't multiply by something and make those fractions go away. So you're still going to need to get everything factored in the denominators. And then you're going to look for the LCD, and you're going to use the LCD as the common denominator. Okay, so just like on the others, the LCD is going to be x minus 2, x plus 2, but what we do with it will be different. It's going to be the denominator that I need for each of these fractions. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare what I need my denominator to be with what I had. And I can see I have the x minus 2 and the x plus 2, got them both. So I'm not going to make any changes on this one. I'm just going to use 8 right here. But then I'm going to look at this one, and I see the x minus 2 right here. So I have this one, but I need the x plus 2. So that means I'm going to multiply top and bottom by x plus 2. So I'm going to need the x that I had. See, this x I already had. But then I needed to throw the x plus 2 into the mix so that my denominators here were the same. Okay. Now that I have that, I can rewrite this as one fraction. And if it's okay with you, let's go ahead and distribute. And then we'd have the x squared plus 2x minus 8. So we've combined, we've added it into one fraction. The rest of this is just going to be to simplify this. That numerator will actually factor. This will actually factor. It'll factor into an x plus 4 and an x minus 2. And then I'm going to bring the denominator we used to have down. So all I did here was factored the numerator. I just didn't have room to do it like I normally do above it. So now the x minus 2's are gone. And that means the answer to this one is x plus 4 over x plus 2. That would be the simplest form at that point. Okay, so I'm going to end this so it doesn't get too long and it lets me upload it. So I'm going to stop sharing